The Bills and Lions game gave us all the points we wanted, but Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry laid an egg in a huge fantasy week. We react to the best, worst, and most surprising performances of Week 15 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here for you every day, Monday through Friday, helping you win your fantasy football leagues. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other host, Vinnie Iyer. I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can enjoy the season with a big return on FanDuel because right now new customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we had some huge fantasy days yesterday and some stinkers as well, but I want to get to the best days first because, man, we have a lot to get through. We got to start with that Lions-Bills game, right? It was never really that close of a game. It was never really that exciting of like an actual NFL game, but the points were there, and Josh Allen went berserk. James Cook scored 2 touchdowns, and then on the Lions side, Jared Goff almost throws for 500 yards. He has 5 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown almost goes for 200 receiving yards and a touchdown. Sam Laporta breaks out for 111 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs has 83 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown, plus a rushing touchdown. I guess the only the bad part of this game was there's not a lot of rushing yards from the Lions side. And then also David Montgomery got injured, which could keep him out for the rest of the regular season.
Yeah, tough situation there for the Lions. I mean, they've had enough injuries on the defensive side, and that all kind of blew up in their face in this game. Like the Bills could do whatever they wanted. Josh Allen was making funny flip passes. He's just kind of playing a video game out there in a lot of these games. And yet another massive game for him. He's just realizing, look, our defense is not that good. Our special teams is suspect. We don't really have a running game unless I open it up for James Cook. We don't really have reliable receivers. It's kind of by committee, by situation. Who am I going to throw to? I have to spread the ball around. So he just has gone nuts taking over. And what they realized also is that the biggest way to beat the Lions was to take them out of their game, which was to pour on the points early and force them out of the running game. And that's why you had Jared Goff still put up the numbers because the Bills let them. I mean, they had a big lead and they were fine with that because – again, the Lions ran out of time and maybe could have done something here if they were a little bit better earlier in the game, but cosmetically it looked okay for them. But look, the Bills went out and smashed them, and Jared Goff has never had this volume. When you look at those pass attempts, right, he's throwing 59 times, almost 60 times in this game. This just doesn't really happen. I mean, some of his best games have come when he's thrown the ball less than 25 times this season. So you knew things were going to get crazy because you knew the Lions were just weren't going to roll over and shut down. You knew they were going to put up some points in this one. So very rarely do we get that opportunity, but we learned that, look, Montgomery may not have done all that much anyway because of the way the game was going. But you look at it overall, like Jahmyr Gibbs can still be a dominant player here. And well, that's why I really liked him. Number one, I thought this matchup was fantastic for him. And he came through. And look, there's not much else you can look at the Bills. I know Khalil Shakir, you can try to play. He needs that little down-the-middle touchdown to really pay off in any game. He got it last week. He got it this week. But really, you're looking at just Josh Allen and James Cook. It's a two-man show where the Lions are like Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jared Goff, all these guys getting involved. And, again, this is what we expect. Look, I don't know if we'll see this again in the Super Bowl based on how this played out, but man, I mean, that's what you want. You want 2 loaded offensive teams to go off, and that's what happened here. It might not have been the best game, but it was ideal because you had a team going up that is really good with running with Allen and Cook and a team that was bad that had to throw and use all their weapons. And that's why Amon-Ra finally broke out and had that big, big game because, again, it's always nice to use those skill players instead of just easily winning sometimes.
Yeah, and I'll say for the Lions going forward, like their defense is so injured that they're going to have to keep putting up points. So that's good for Jared Goff and the rest of them. They do have a harder game on the road against the Bears next week, but we'll talk about that when we get into our rankings later on in the week. Lamar Jackson has another 5 touchdown game. I mean, he's just a fantasy god. He really is. He does get a tough matchup as well, like the Lions do. He has to face the Steelers, and I know Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith and AJ Brown had a great game, right, against the Steelers, but Lamar Jackson, that's his kryptonite. So, we'll be getting into some Lamar Jackson discussion this week as well. But Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans, they come through for anyone that trusted them in the first round of their playoffs. Baker Mayfield goes for 4 touchdowns, 288 yards. Mike Evans, 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, this is why you draft Mike Evans, right? For these huge games. And he's going to hurt you a lot of weeks, but he can win you weeks as well. Bucky Irving got, a great game on the ground, but didn't score the touchdown. That was Rashad White who got the receiving touchdown. But good all around. And we'll talk about Jalen McMillan too later on in our show for another surprising performance.
Yeah, and I talked about this a little bit. I was asked about it. I mean, you look at Ben Johnson, Joe Brady, who's right up there in calling plays this season, Liam Cohn. And these guys have all been seen as the young hotshot coordinators. There's one more we'll get into a little bit later. But when you look at that, I mean, yes, it's scheming these guys open. It doesn't matter necessarily what defense they're playing. They just outcoach them pretty plain and simple here. I mean, Jesse Minter, they didn't have the personnel to contain things downfield, and the Chargers didn't run the ball. And they've been really depending on running the ball. Who knew that J.K. Dobbins not being in there would kind of hurt them and then also trickle down to hurt their defense? And Justin Herbert's not exactly keeping the chains moving there with this offense, so that's letting teams stay on the field, make some big plays. And that's why the Chargers are slumping. We'll see if they break out of it against the Broncos. But right now, their defense is more vulnerable than it's been all season. It could be also they're facing some dangerous teams. But Mike Evans, good for him. But this is Mike Evans, the experience. You never know when he's going to go off and have a big game. But I do like that they're using Joe McMillan. They're scheming him open a little bit better, kind of as the number 2 to replace Chris Godwin. So much is happening here. Great game plan by Liam Cohen. And they get the Cowboys this week. You figure in prime time, this team needs to keep winning to secure the NFC South. I do like them continuing to stay hot this week.
Yeah, the Cowboys just have way too many primetime games talking about that they're going to be into primetime. But yeah, I love this for Baker and for Evans. Just keep rolling with them. A duo that you really liked going into this week, they paid off for you. Your FanDuel lineup may have done great this week. Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams against the Jaguars. The first long touchdown goes to Garrett Wilson. That was exciting for anyone with Garrett Wilson, but that's pretty much where his day ended. Garrett Wilson has 56 yards and a touchdown, but Davante Adams, 198 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. Pretty much everything that Aaron Rodgers did went to Davante Adams. Rodgers threw for 289 and 3 touchdowns. He also had 45 rushing yards on the ground, which is insane for old man Rodgers. But yeah, he came through. Best finish he's had all season long for Aaron Rodgers, and gets the Rams next week.
I think we learned that this week the Jaguars defense benefited from Will Levis pre-benching Will Levis last week, and that's why they didn't do it. The Jaguars defense suddenly didn't improve. The Titans offense was stumbling, and well, they didn't do that this week. But when you look at that situation, I really think it's a bit ego-driven. Aaron Rodgers wants to prove that him and Davante Adams are the core of this Jets team for next year. This tells me he doesn't want to retire. Like, if he wanted to retire, I think he would have just been, I don't know what I'm doing here. But he wants to make Davante look good again. That tells me they want to keep this intact here and going next year. Now, they do get the Rams this week. The Rams are a favorable matchup overall. I mean, the way these two guys are playing the last 2 weeks, I mean, they played well against the Dolphins, who, again, may have quit. So that helps going forward here for any teams playing the Dolphins. But when you look at the Jets, they're really put it together. Again, Rodgers, Adams maybe needed a few games to rekindle that chemistry from Green Bay, but it's completely here. I think it lasts for the next couple games, and it's going to carry over into 2025. There's no way, I don't think, if Adams is still there and all that is lined up, that Rodgers hangs it up.
We'll see if the Jets stick with this duo. I mean,
yeah, that's the thing. Will the Jets do it?
And if I was a Jets fan, I wouldn't want to stick with that. Now, Brian Thomas Jr., an awesome rookie. Like, he's been
Yeah.
so good, even with Mac Jones. I mean, it's almost gotten better with Mac Jones, right? But because of all the injuries in this offense, he's showing that he can be a number one target in an offense already as a rookie. But 14 targets yesterday, 10 receptions, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns against the Jets, who have not been giving up a ton of points to wide receivers. I guess they have been lately. But if it wasn't for Jaden Daniels having such a good year, he probably would be in the rookie of the year discussion. We'll see how high he ends up getting drafted next year in redraft if he keeps this up the rest of the year. But I mean, just he's been really, really solid. 82 yards, 76 and a touchdown, 86, and then 105 and 2 touchdowns again yesterday. So I've loved having him on my teams.
Yeah, he's not going to quite end up with the Puka Nakua volume from last year with the catches, but in terms of yards, he's pushing towards 1,200. In terms of the TDs, he could score more than Puka's 6 from last year. So all these things. I mean, if Brian Thomas Jr. was as hyped as Marvin Harrison Jr. or played on the Giants like Malik Neighbors, you'd be hearing a lot more about a season. And like Brock Bowers has been a great rookie as well. But yeah, in pure production here, he's done it outside as a big play threat. He's done it inside when needed. He does it after the catch. He's done it with Trevor Lawrence. He's done it with other receivers on the field. He's done it as a go-to guy. He's done it now with Mac Jones. So everywhere you look at this rookie, shocking that he went to LSU. And yet another guy that people are undervaluing is just this. They try to say he's a big play threat. A lot more than that. He's shown like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase before him. He can line up everywhere and is a legit number one all over the field. So I'm really excited about him. And again, I like that he produces with anyone out there. So I'm really excited to see what he can do next year and just get him a little bit of help. Get him a little bit of a experience number 2 that isn't like Gabe Davis, someone consistent. I know Christian Kirk is out there, but injuries have kind of hurt him. Now Evan Ingram's out. So this guy's doing it as the marked man, and you really like that. Now, Michelle, this was a tired storyline. I just want to mention it real quick. The Eagles passing game didn't go anywhere. I'm sorry to say it came back alive at the expense of your Steelers, but again, they created this, right? A.J. Brown complained. Someone was worried about Jalen Hurts, and then what do? They quiet everyone, and everyone asks them about it. It's kind of ridiculous. We knew they could do this. They have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. It's not like there was some devoid passing game that couldn't get going, but they finally got it going. But that's what you would expect, right? You can't run easily on the Steelers. You see that with Saquon. So, again, stop with this Eagles stuff. I think they just overcorrected. They're going to do whatever the matchup dictates to put up points. This week, they'll probably do it all against the Commanders, right? So just enjoy it. Eagles fans are so whiny about it, about what their teams are. You have a great offense. Just enjoy it. Like every team in this league would love to have your offense that can run for 200 yards or pass for 400 in any given week. So just a little bit of a cider there. And I will also pass along, that's my little mini rant, James Conner, your guy. I mean, this guy is still bringing it. I mean, I don't know.
He is. He was the only bright spot of the Cardinals offense yesterday. Right now, he's a running back 1 on the week in scoring, 2 touchdowns, 110 yards on the ground. And again, the rest of the Cardinals offense was a disappointment, which we'll get to in a moment, as well as some other top running backs this week that you've been leaning on all year long. They've been killing it for you. And then they put up just a little poopy, stinky points in your lineup to kill you if you're in your playoffs. But let's transition over now to like the most disappointing performances of the week. We'll do that right after a quick break. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you'd like, or was that lost in childhood? I know us as adults, we can lose that curiosity and, our interest that we had so much growing up kind of fades away, and you start just focusing on your adult and growing up, responsibilities that you have. But therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder, because your back to school era can come at any age. I know online therapy helped me find my love for fantasy again and made me realize, I can do this as a job. It doesn't just have to be something I loved as a teenager and that I need to grow out of. So honestly, online therapy is a big reason why I'm sitting here with you today on this podcast. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you don't have to stress because you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Give online therapy a try and get on your way to being your best self. It's that time of the year. The college football playoff is back. And with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. James Conner did it. He took all the points from Saquon Barkley, from Derrick Henry, from Joe Mixon. I mean, all those three guys right there scored fewer than 8 points. Saquon Barkley with just 65 rushing yards, 9 yards to the air, no touchdowns. It was against a harder Steelers team, so you kind of give him a break there. Derrick Henry, though, on the other hand, had an amazing matchup. And the Ravens killed the Giants, still only had 14 carries for 67 yards, no touchdowns for 6 fantasy points. And then Joe Mixon luckily had 5 receptions for 33 yards because he put up 23 rushing yards and 0 touchdowns. But again, in a harder matchup against the Dolphins. So I think Henry out of these 3 were the biggest, like, oh no, what happened?
Yeah, because the other 2 at least had the excuses. There was some injury concern, right? They had to check them out and come out of the game for a second, and they had that random catch by Dare Ogunbowale that play. So then you have Saquon. I mean, again, they use Kenneth Gainwell quite a bit to make, and I think this is a better choice anyway. Like maybe they won't go after the record now with this game. I mean, it could significantly drops his pace. I think he would still be there for 2,000, but sometimes you have to preserve these guys. You want to get them beat up as much, and you're going to have games like this. And it's like they played some tough teams. I mean, Mixon, you're a little bit more upset about because he played the Dolphins and you were able to run on the Dolphins most teams, but the Steelers can be tough in defense all around, and they just throwed it like it was the wrong time for Barkley because they had to prove they could pass the ball in that game, and they were intent to do that, and Barkley was out. But you're right, Henry was just weird. I think Lamar, if he gives him 2 of those touchdowns somehow, here, take 2 of those touchdowns, the game was okay, but Lamar kind of dominated. He also had 65 rushing yards, Lamar, so he cut into that. It was maybe too easy, the Giants matchup, where they can pick what they want to do. The Ravens,
and then they ended up sitting their starters, so Derrick Henry wasn't even in for the end of it to get those. Like,
so it was too easy, and that's not good, right? When they didn't really have to close out the game. I mean, Lamar was pulling up his pants as he was running for yards. So when you have a game like that, this is maybe a time to say, hey, look, we're not going to overwork Derrick Henry. So sometimes a victim of circumstance, and all 3 backs were that.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately for Henry, he has to play the Steelers next week. Only 13 carries, 65 yards, but he did score a touchdown against the Steelers. Overall, it's not the matchup you want, but you're going to stick with Derrick Henry. Saquon Barkley gets the Commanders this week, who he put up pretty much like 200 yards and 2 touchdowns against a couple weeks ago. Joe Mixon gets the Chiefs, though, so we'll have to see where we rank him. In 3 of the last 4 games played, he's running back 30 and running back 27 with a running back 4 finish in there. So we'll discuss Joe Mixon in our rankings for this week, but he's the guy I'd probably most worried about of these 3. Now, we talked about the Cardinals offense with James Conner doing it all, but that left nothing for anyone else. And they didn't really need to do anything else because they were playing the Patriots, who stink. But, I mean, Kyler Murray has been falling apart the last 4 games. It's been quarterback 24, 18, 10, 21. He had 0 touchdowns in this game. I mean, his passing numbers are fine, 23 for 30, 224 passing yards, but not really any running, and he didn't score any touchdowns. And then Marvin Harrison, man, 6 targets, 2 receptions, 32 yards. He's been maybe the most disappointing player of the year.
Yeah, disappointing rookie. We'll think about some others for disappointing players. It might be Christian McCaffrey or where you're drafting him, and he's not available. So, but yeah, the most disappointing rookie based on the hype, right? We were so hyped about Marvin Harrison Jr. Can't miss. He just hasn't been in sync in this offense totally. And Brian Thomas has kind of been integrated from the get-go with what he's doing, even Malik Neighbors. So this is maybe just poor coaching and just poor connection with Kyler Murray that's not really materialized pretty well. This passing game is just not that exciting, right, in general. I will have some good news if you have Josh Allen. Expect another monster game because he's going at this Patriots defense next week. But Patriots defense is just an absolute mess. Now, another team that I thought was terrible, Michelle, the Dolphins. I don't know. Like Tua called his teammates out. He had one of his worst, it's arguably his worst career game, right? He was throwing picks that looked bad when he had to throw any time more than like 5 yards downfield. He like threw a ball to be intercepted, and that didn't help Tyreek Hill. It was just pretty bad. I mean, somehow, of course, Jonnu Smith always gets his numbers, and he scored again. But like, man, I don't know what to think about the Dolphins. I don't know how much I want to trust them going forward.
No, and the thing is, they get the 49ers this week. Tyreek Hill has been, I mean, he would be
Yeah,
up there most disappointing too. At least he's had a couple good, like
absolutely.
it looked like they were starting to come along, and then all of a sudden they just couldn't. And the Texans just locked them down, and they're not like a team that typically locks down passing defenses, especially with like scoring. So yeah, 2 is looking bad again. I mean, it was looking on track. It looks bad again. 49ers, I'm not really interested in that. I mean, if you want to still stick with Tyreek Hill, then okay, but temper your expectations. And Devin Achane is just getting it done with the receptions he's
Yeah,
getting, honestly,
absolutely.
because the rushing yards are not there. I feel better about Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison having an okay week in week 16 against the Panthers. Like
Right.
I would go back into that than I would with Tua and even Tyreek Hill
Yeah.
against the 49ers next week.
Yeah, 49ers are playing for pride. I mean, Dolphins clearly are not into it. 49ers are still kind of alive. Dolphins are still kind of alive. But if you tell me what team is going to play hard in that kind of marquee window on Sunday, which is the game we're going to get at 4:25, like I would think the 49ers will play a lot harder in that game. So, yeah, that's not great for the Dolphins. Now, we have to get to the Chiefs, and it wasn't just Travis Kelce, 4 catches, 27 yards. By the way, back where he grew up in Cleveland area. And then you also had the backfield canceling each other. This team cannot score anymore on the ground, it seems like. So it's been brutal. So I don't know what to think. Now you possibly could get Carson Wentz, but again, if this output is limited anyway, like could Wentz be any worse than what we're seeing? At least Xavier Worthy kind of got going, but that's the thing. It's like by committee, and then some guys can just disappear for Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick Mahomes has a high ankle sprain week to week. They do have a 2-game lead in first place with 3 games
Mm-hmm.
left. Now, it's really a 1-game lead because the Bills have the tiebreaker. They get the Texans, the Steelers, and the Broncos. 3 defenses. I mean, the Texans just really shut down the Dolphins. So 3 defenses that you're not going to be thrilled about starting the running backs or Travis
Mm-hmm.
Kelce or Mahomes anyways, because Mahomes wasn't putting up
Yeah,
points. So this might be an offense we just want to stay away from for the time being, which is
yeah,
crazy to say about the Chiefs and you know how they're 13-1, but it's spread out. No, everyone's touching the ball. It's not very efficient either. It's just kind of gross all around. So I'm staying away. But the quarterback on the other side, Jameis Winston. Oh my lord! If you played him, I'm so sorry. He scored. He scored minus 0.4 points. 3 interceptions. He was
mm,
benched against that Chiefs game for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. We'll see if he becomes a starter again. They haven't made up their mind, the Browns, but they get the Bengals. It would be an amazing matchup. I won't be surprised if Winston starts and throws 4 touchdowns next week. It's just, yeah, he might be done.
yeah. Yeah, it was fun, Jameis Winston, but you're not going to be Joe Flacco 2024 as we thought you might be. So that's over. But I know you don't want to talk about this, but I will just mention it to get out of here. We'll do it quickly. The Steelers, I don't know what happened. Well, I know what happened. George Pickens was not out there. Then had the field stretcher. They relied on Calvin Austin and Pat Freiermuth, and they were playing the Eagles. The Eagles defense was going nuts. Najee Harris in the running game was completely erased in that game. Russell Wilson was not feeling comfortable at all. So again, it's one of those games. We should get a rebound maybe against the Ravens this week. And that's the Chiefs defense. So I don't know if it's all that great here going for Najee Harris in those matchups.
No, I think like without George Pickens, you can't play any of these guys besides Pat Fryermuth, who keeps coming through with a touchdown. It's not like his receiving yards or receptions are doing anything, but he keeps coming through with that touchdown. Russell Wilson's not playable without George Pickens. If Pickens comes back, maybe. But yeah, and Najee with 6 carries, 14 yards. Ugh. Yeah, this offense is gross again. It was fun while it lasted. All right, we had to get into some injuries. The David Montgomery one I mentioned, Nick Chubb, broken foot. Who's the next man up in these teams? Who had some surprising performances? Will they keep it up? We'll get into all that to close out today's show right after a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle this big action coming up. We have holidays. Don't forget those Christmas week games. Don't forget Saturday games this week. And Michelle also mentioned all that college football action. It's time. It's America's #1 sportsbook is ready for you. A busy football couple weeks here. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. And when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play, and view so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started at $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. In the games tonight, I actually like the Falcons, and I also like the Vikings tonight to take care of their relatively small numbers in their matchups. Vikings by 7 against the Bears. Falcons on the road, 5.5-point favorites at the Raiders. Falcons need to win. Vikings need to win. So I think these two NFC teams will come through for you tonight. So check it out only at FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. That's at FanDuel.com. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook sponsor of the NFL. All right, Michelle, let's get to some sad news, but also looking forward to some better things maybe ahead. So let's get into it. Dave Montgomery has a knee injury. Nick Chubb, his career could be done. He has a broken foot. So what do we do with those two situations going forward?
Well, Jerome Ford is the easy guy to pick up for Nick Chubb. He had 7 carries, 84 yards, and a touchdown yesterday. And that was in a hard matchup against the Chiefs. Now he gets the Bengals next week. Like, he's going to be a very viable play, especially in a low RB2 spot there. Now with David Montgomery, like, this probably just means Jahmyr Gibbs' workload is going to increase a lot, which that's great for Jahmyr Gibbs fantasy owners. There will be someone like Craig Reynolds or Sian Vaki, the rookie, that will get some work. I just don't know if I care about picking him up. Maybe Craig Reynolds, right? They do go to Chicago next week, and it's not a place that Jared Goff normally thrives as a passer. So they're going to have to run a lot, and Craig Reynolds could be getting some work.
Yeah, David Montgomery seems to miss time in every season, and this is the time, I guess. Maybe not opportune for his fantasy manager. So, yeah, Reynolds is a guy they plugged into that power role. But, yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs could just roll and help some leagues really win those best teams in the playoffs. So Jahmyr Gibbs is probably on a lot of playoff teams, and he's going to be even better after what he did against the Bills. So, yeah, Ford, I think, is very viable the rest of the way, not just against the Bengals if you need him, how long ever that rest of the way is in your fantasy playoffs. Now, Tyjae Spears, I actually had Jerome Ford and Tyjae Spears kind of stashed on a team. Now, it was kind of random. Spears had done absolutely nothing. He'd missed games with different injuries, including a concussion. It's just so random to score 2 touchdowns. So was the benching of Will Levis, who was okay. Who thought, okay, the Titans might have a future. So I don't know what to do here, but are you interested in Spears or Mason Rudolph in this offense? Either in the last few games, they do get the Colts this week, which is a decent matchup.
It is a decent matchup. I do think more of this had to do with facing the Bengals. They're so bad over the middle short. Think back a couple weeks ago, the Steelers, the one time they ever passed over the middle short to Najee Harris. Sorry, Najee Harris and Pat Fryermuth over and over and over because they cannot guard that area. So that's what you saw yesterday with Tyjae Spears and Chig Okonkwo, right? That's why they had good games. It was because they're facing the Bengals. I don't expect Spears to keep getting 7 targets and 87 receiving yards each game. He only had 4 carries in the game. He did get a rushing touchdown though. So he's not going to be a guy I'm ranking high just because of this week. He's going to be involved a little bit, but he's going to need to get a touchdown to have any value. But definitely not someone like dying to get off waivers. However, what about Bretton Strange, the tight end? Because tight ends have been gross. Evan Ingram goes to IR, and he gets 12 targets, 11 receptions, 73 yards. Bretton Strange did. It was all Brian Thomas Jr. Strange, and they get the Raiders next week, a solid enough matchup. Is he a guy you want to pick up off waivers if you're struggling at the tight end position with like a Travis Kelce?
Yeah, the way things are going now that you have Mac Jones, and I don't know, are we going to see really Trevor Lawrence? I mean, Mac Jones might just close out the season here, and he seems to favor a lot of Brian Thomas because there's no one else. And now Bretton Strange because there's no one else, just him and Thomas and Parker Washington, for whatever that's worth, not a lot. So when you look at it, I mean, they do incorporate the tight end to this offense quite a bit. So basically what has happened is Thomas is doing his big play role. He's doing the Gabe Davis role. He's in the outside role. He's doing the Christian Kirk role. And then Bretton Strange is now picking up where Evan Ingram is. So, yeah, these are the two guys that are viable. I mean, tight ends don't often fall from the sky, but here's one for you late if you need one in the playoffs.
2 rookie wide receivers doing much better than most rookie wide receivers that went much earlier than them. Jalen McMillan for the Buccaneers has 5 receptions for 75 yards and a touchdown. He gets the Cowboys next week. And then Jalen Coker of the Panthers, undrafted rookie, 4 receptions, 110 yards and a touchdown against the Cowboys, who I just brought up. McMillan gets to see next week. But Coker gets the Cardinals next week. He did get 83 of his 110 yards on 1 catch. Who do you believe is better moving forward? Would you pick up either on waivers?
I think I definitely have a clear shot here, Jalen McMillan. I mean, Jalen Coker, God, everyone's named Jalen these days. But when you look at Jalen Coker, like, it's been a different dude every week, right? Remember that game that Chris Moore had and everyone was jumping on him? And then you had Adam Thielen do it last week. Xavier Legette had one game a few weeks ago. Deontay Johnson, did he do anything? No. But when you look at that, I mean, it's just who's going to be the random Panther who does something this week? Where Jalen McMillan, he's a legit talent. He had 2 touchdowns the week prior. They've been waiting for him to mature a little bit, and they need him because Chris Godwin is down. So when I would watch in this week's game, and I think part of this production was there, we didn't have Trayvon Diggs in the game, and we did have Deron Bland. So Deron Bland could be on Mike Evans. I think that was a good bit of scheming by Liam Cohen. So this is why you're having a little bit of K-Dot like regression here, because McMillan has finally risen as a player. So McMillan, if he can get those number 2 corners to work on, and Cohen's like saying, hey, put all your guys on Mike Evans. We don't care. Evans is still going to make plays. McMillan's going to make plays. He's in business here. So I think he's going to be a key part of their offense, not just finishing the season, but looking like they're a playoff team as well.
It's definitely interesting because of that Chris Godwin role and what he's filling. So definitely think he's a really good pickup this week. It's going to be risky, obviously, to play him ever, but it's a nice matchup, and it's definitely going to be a viable flex option this next week. Now, lastly, to hit on here, Rashad Bateman, 3 receptions, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. I don't care. There was a long throws there. They get the Steelers this week. Bateman, it's just up and down for Bateman. I'm not going to go chase those points.
Yeah, the one player we haven't talked about much in recent weeks, I've realized, is Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they had to buy and all that, but Zay Flowers is kind of, like in a game where you have 290 from Lamar Jackson and 5 scores, and Zay Flowers is hardly registering anything. Like, it's a little concerning to have the Steelers this week. I know the Eagles duo just did a lot of damage on them, but Zay Flowers and this passing game may not have the same type of success. The Steelers know them a little bit better, so I'm not sure what to expect here. But yeah, you can't chase Bateman because we've seen this before from Bateman. Yep. He's gone back to doing nothing, so absolutely not. I'm not forcing him in the lineup when there's a potential I could get 1 catch for 8 yards as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That is it for today's show. We will dig in deeper into our waiver wire rankings and discuss the 2 games we have on Monday night, because there's still 4 teams left to play. Thank you all to making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Every day is hit that subscribe button on YouTube, or hit that subscribe button on whatever podcast app you're on listening to us. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye, y'all.